Big hats. Oh,
Vice Mayor at 6:01, we're live.
Sit down.
Alrighty, thank you, Madam Clerk, and welcome everybody to everybody to this City Commission Budget Workshop. Today is Tuesday, August 22nd, and would the clerk please take the roll?
Mayor Pam Triolo is absent for the meeting. Vice Mayor Scott Maxwell.
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy.
Here.
Commissioner Andy Amoroso.
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Before we begin, I'd like to remind, or to tell for those who don't know, unfortunately, Mayor Triolo's aunt passed away earlier this week, so she's out of town, so I hope we'll keep she and her family in our prayers. So with that, would Commissioner Amoroso lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, thank you so much. City Manager, you want to start us off tonight?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. This workshop is next, I think it's our last scheduled before we get into the actual budget adoption hearings. And staff, our finance director, has prepared a brief overview to let you know where we stand right now in the various funds. Specifically, I guess we're going to address the general fund. So Marie, Eleanor, if you'll please step forward.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. If I can get the presentation queued up. Mayor, would you like me to begin without the presentation since you do have a hard copy of
Sure.
it, or would you like me to wait?
I'm sure you've got a little bit of a preamble you can share with us. Do you feel like
Okay.
you can start? Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, the presentation is up. Tonight's agenda, if you can just go back one slide very quickly. The manager and the vice mayor did a brief introduction. We discussed the budget development process, and the manager did allude that we have 2 public hearings scheduled for September. And of course, vice mayor, mayor, and commission will have an opportunity to review tonight's budget. Particularly, we're looking for direction on the general fund and the beach fund. And then we'll briefly review the calendar for the month of September. Okay. The 2 funds highlighted, again, are the 2 funds we're looking for some direction to make sure that we are able to balance those 2 funds. Next, and you saw these slides at the last commission budget workshop. This is the overall budget for fiscal year 2018. This is a graphic presentation. For the general fund, we talk about the controllables and non-controllable, and that information hasn't really changed from the last workshop. Next slide. Okay. And again, these are the graphic representation of the controllable and non-controllables for the general fund. And again, those were part of the presentation earlier this month. Okay. Now we have the general fund budget, and I just want to briefly go over this information with you. We've had 2 commission budget workshop, one July 25th and one August 8th, and this shows the difference between the 2 workshops after we received policy direction from the City Commission. Currently, we're showing a deficit in the general fund of approximately $693,000, and we're projected to use fund balance in order to fill that deficit. With that deficit and with the budget as proposed, we're proposing that, and we believe there was consensus from the August 8th meeting, to do one-time expenditures for the Spillway Pier demo, the FEC crossing, and the license plate readers. Okay. Next slide is the beach. Is the beach fund. I just have one more slide, then Vice Mayor. The beach fund. We have the representation of the July 25th meeting and then the August 8th meeting. Currently, we still show a slight deficit in the beach fund of approximately $49,000. And again, we removed the pier as an expense to be funded out of the sales surtax. And with that, I will turn it over to the commission for any direction you wish to provide.
Thank you, Marie. I think what I'd like to do is have each of us spend a few quality minutes and ask all your questions, and we'll see how that takes us down to where that goes. No, you can have 1 minute, Commissioner Robinson. Who would like to go first? Commissioner Robinson?
Sure.
Or Commissioner Hardy?
It's okay. I'll refrain from saying something I think is funny. On page 7, there is projected here, right, a net reduction in the millage by 0.25.
Correct.
I don't know, and maybe I read the commission incorrectly while I was up here. I don't know that there was consensus.
There was consensus to show what that would be
To
in
show.
terms of reduction, and that's what you see there.
Okay.
A reduction of the millage rate of 0.25 is approximately 211. That's a net number.
Is the plan to present a budget on?
September 12th?
Yes. When we do the adoption of the tentative millage rate, what is the plan to, for that to be the starting point for that meeting? Because I don't know that there's consensus for that.
Vice Mayor, if I could, Commissioner Hardy, at the last workshop, and this is going from staff's discussion with the full commission, and then individually as we've met with you since then, it's our belief that there was enough of you to support this idea because it was brought up at the commission meeting as something, and if that's not where we're going, then we need to know, but it's included in the numbers is the bottom line. So you're asking, would this go forward in the projected budget that you see in September? Right now, it's reflected in these numbers.
So
Correct.
I would certainly like to have a Hale and Hardy discussion about this here for a few reasons. First of all, I don't think that we're at that place to where we can begin to reduce our millage rate. Second of all, I think that with what we will likely see in 2018, which is an increase in the property homestead, the homestead exemption from $50,000 to $75,000, with an increase from $100,000 to $125,000 of value to qualify for that, we're going to see, according to Dorothy Jacks at the Property Tax Appraiser's Office, basically a $286,000 decline in revenues from that. So this would be in addition to what we're likely going to see starting in fiscal year 2019.
Yes.
And so I'm really concerned. The voters are probably going to get that $200,000 back, $200,000 to $300,000 back anyway. Why not wait for them to do what they will likely do, which is vote themselves pocket money, which is rational. Although I might not agree with it, and save the millage rate reductions for some date in the future when we are more of an economic powerhouse than we are right now. I'd like to hear other commissioners' thoughts on that.
Okay, do you have any other comments with respect to the budget?
No, well, the pier repair kind of caught me off guard, but I understand it is a capital expense, and it helps us get to closer to a zero deficit in the beach fund. I don't know that going forward that the best way to solve the beach fund's recurring problems is to do this with it. The beach fund has much larger problems. Other than that, I don't see anything here that makes me scratch my head or anything, aside from the millage rate reduction that I didn't know we had consensus for going forward.
Okay. Who would like to go next?
Go ahead.
Commissioner Robinson.
The consensus was, I guess, on a facial recognition. I didn't know that we were actually verbally expressing consent on some of this stuff, and so and sales tax. This is now we're into the discussion on the penny sales tax with the spillway, the FEC, and the license plate readers. I've got a few other things that I could put on there that we didn't talk about. because I thought we weren't going to talk about penny sales tax, but now it's in the budget.
Well, no. Let me clarify that for you, Commissioner Robinson. This is just the bottom box here. It's just an illustration of projects that would be funded with the surplus tax money. These numbers are not included in our budget. We're just drawing your
So
attention.
when do we decide when we're going to spend money on the Spillway Park?
Well, that's going to be in our October meeting, October workshop.
Is that right? Yeah, good. Because,
Well, finish your thought.
I'll relinquish my time to Commissioner Amoroso.
Go ahead.
Well, and I understand what you're saying, Vice Mayor, but I disagree with it because if we take these three items out of our budget tonight, they come out of the budget. They go into the penny sales tax. We, in essence, are saying that these three items were the top three items that we said we're going to start with the penny sales tax and pull them out. And then going back to the conversation about the millage, I asked the same question to staff earlier. I said, the consensus I thought was, yes, everybody would like to lower the millage rate. However, this is not the right time. And it was relayed to me the same way that you just did was, there was consensus on we'd like to see what the numbers look like.
Correct.
And I agree with Commissioner Hardy that, the new homestead exemption is going to be 280. So that's kind of a wash. And I don't know that I'm comfortable, lowering the millage rate right now when we have so many other things that we're looking at. We're looking at the beach. We're looking at, possible downtown parking. We're looking at the Park of Commerce. I just don't know that it's the right time to, be lowering. And I think the consensus up here was everybody would like to do it. It just may not be the right time.
Okay. Before we go any further, Commissioner Robinson, do you want to finish up your comments, or are you just going to speak to what Commissioner Amoroso just said?
No, I wanted to say that this, to me, this is a leap of faith and a exercise in trust of staff, because I'm not completely. I don't have all my answers, all my questions answered, but I'm glad that we can even have a conversation about reducing the millage rate. It would indicate a management success, but then we turn around and ask for more money out of the penny sales tax. I just,
City Manager.
Vice Mayor, Commissioner Robinson, in the discussion in the development of the budget, the only times there's been discussion on the sales tax is specific to items that we were having to fund in the budget. And I think we all really understood the FEC crossings, the spillway pier demo, and the license plate readers, and I think there's a couple of things, were things that there was a understanding, and I don't know if that's completely your understanding, but I think in the conversations that we had in the public hearings that if it's not funded here, it's got to be committed to come out of the sales tax. So I apologize if that wasn't conveyed adequately, but I just want to make that's a clear statement. If you guys do not include it in the budget one place, it's got to go in another.
So I've had conversations with CRA. They're looking forward to covering the city with Wi-Fi, which is a step for education. It's a step for business. It's the future that everybody else is going to, and that's apparently if they get a grant at the end of September, are we going to be prepared to match what we said we were going to match in their grant?
I would think that would come out of their budget.
Out of
City Manager.
Yeah, Vice Mayor, Commissioner Robinson, these items, and there is no consideration, unless I'm misspeaking, Madam Feinstein, for any Wi-Fi project in the current budget numbers.
Correct.
The only numbers that we're dealing with here were ones that we have to fund, and those are the ones that are listed. And if you don't put them in the general fund budget, it's going to be coming out of the sales tax is our expectation, or then we're going to have to go back and amend the budget if that doesn't happen.
Commissioner Amoroso.
As a liaison to the CRA, the Wi-Fi was actually in Jack's budget, and Jack supported it 150%. I have not had the time to talk to our new director yet. I have a meeting with him on Tuesday to discuss that, but it was a matching grant that the CRA was applying for. The CRA would get the grant, they would put in some money, and Jack had in his budget to put in some money. So I'd like to circle back around and look at that in the utility budget and figure out if that can happen, but I think it should be a priority.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that too. Jack's budget is the electric utility budget,
Correct.
which is part of our budget.
Correct.
So
But what I'm
I appreciate that. And
trying to say
he
is
was
almost
very
like no one
proactive
knows
in
about
looking
it, but people did know about it.
That's correct, and it's something that at the time we felt we could try to commit to, but as numbers came in and things happened, it's something that evaporated currently in this budget. So, but I appreciate your comment, Commissioner.
But if we committed to it, we're not going to meet our commitment, or we're going to take it out of penny sales tax.
No, it's not in the penny sales tax at the moment.
Now, well, I think what the city manager is saying is that this is probably going to have to, if the commitment is there, it's going to have to come out of the next budget, not this budget.
And not out of the general fund,
Correct.
out of the
Electric fund,
utility fund.
Correct.
Right.
Am I paraphrasing correctly?
We'll have to have that conversation. Right now, there
Well,
is
I
no
mean-
commitment to it.
We haven't had one word of conversation about Wi-Fi up until tonight. And here we are at the last stages.
Well, there was previous
That's-
conversations in earlier discussions at different points.
Mr. Amoroso.
Well, today's the first time I saw these three items as being in the budget.
Okay,
And
I guess I try to clarify. I hear what you're saying, but these things have been discussed. In fact, we had the conversation where we talked specifically about the FEC crossing for the $500,000, and my assertion was that we should probably keep it in the budget, okay, because it's an expense that we're going to have on an ongoing basis, okay. But after looking at how things were shaken out for the budget, and taking into consideration that the $500,000 was a lot more than the normal $200,000 that is appropriated or budgeted for, that maybe this would be an opportunity to use the sales tax money. And I think we also, I hate to use the term, but I think we also kind of looked at these as being low dollar, low ticket items, and not really major items that are going to significantly dip into that money, the surtax money, and while at the same time giving us some relief on the budget side, on the general fund.
But this totals 800,000.
Mm-hmm.
I was assuming we're going to be talking about real money.
Real money, yeah.
I didn't know that the license plate readers were real consensus. And as far as the spillway part goes, the spillway fishing pier goes, I am really think that we should find some extra guys somewhere or something to take care of that liability tomorrow. And if it costs us $20,000, we should do it. It's really an embarrassment that we allowed the maintenance of something that we're responsible for to get to that level.
Commissioner Hardy?
I certainly share Commissioner Robinson's sense of urgency about the Spillway Park. I just think that it's important for us to do it right, and that may require spending some actual money. I don't think that we should be doing these sorts of things every year. I think the license plate readers is something that we've been talking about for a long time, and it is technically infrastructure, and it's extremely important, and we can leverage that to make the city safer. And I don't really see any problem with this for this year. And as far as this stuff here, basically when we're voting not to put them in the budget, we're voting necessarily to make them a part of the penny sales tax. And so that's just really important to remember. I'm just concerned about the net reduction of the millage rate by a quarter of a mill or whatever it is. That's really concerning to me. In fact, I would go so far as to say, there's such a thing as a rollback, right? When property tax receipts increase, right? You would basically decrease your millage rate to, offset the difference. I would suggest that we consider doing the opposite, in 2018. So I'm not as a result of loss of revenue from this constitutional amendment that was rammed down local governments' throats across the state. So I am very concerned about the $211,000.
Well, but if we could cut the millage rate, which is a give back to the citizens, and they appreciated it, without coming back a week after and wanting the same thing, but more, they're going to be looking for things to do, and we're going to be looking for $211,000.
Commissioner Amoroso, do you have any other comments?
Not at the moment.
Yeah, I'd like to comment just briefly on the what the future holds for us in terms of the homestead exemption proposal that'll be on the ballot. I'm going to start by saying I don't think it's going to pass, and I'll tell you why. In essence, if the voters were going to vote themselves another homestead exemption, it would ultimately end up becoming another tax increase for them. Because what's going to happen is, forget the 211 that we're talking about tonight. Let's say we did nothing with that. What would happen is municipalities across the state are going to have conversations about having to cut services because of the reduction in their income. And this becomes a health and welfare safety issue across the state. So this ultimately is going to end up being a tax increase, and I think that you're going to find that those who oppose the homestead exemption are going to paint it that way and campaign in that vein, that this is not the best way to offer tax relief for Floridians right now. Come on, Commissioner Hardy.
Yeah, the problem is that basically when the legislature put this thing together, they did it in a way to basically divide the state, right? Mm-hmm. So you have poor counties that have struggled with the current level of exemption to fund services for their citizens. And basically what the state did was with this is that they exempted poor counties from having to honor this, right? But poor cities that are in rich counties, right? Like Lake Worth, we're a poor city in a rich county, right? We're near the statutory cap of 10 mills. We don't get the same relief that poor counties do, right? So basically, folks in, I'm not going to name counties here, but folks in poor counties have no incentive to vote against this whatsoever. And if you are ideologically disposed to vote for tax decreases, then this is something that you're most likely going to do, not really caring how it's going to affect cities like Lake Worth, Lake Park, Mangonia, Belglade, Pahokee, et cetera. So I'm very pessimistic, and I think we need to be thinking about how to make sure that we don't lose any ability whatsoever to provide services for folks. That's perhaps a next year conversation. I think for this year, though, we definitely should not be lowering the millage rate, because basically we're setting ourselves up for serious, basically we're turning a $286,000 shortfall, right, until a $497,000 shortfall 2 years from now. I don't know that that's the best way to do it. Also, considering the fact that voters, we don't see the full increase, right, in property values reflected in our budget. Someone's home value increases by $10,000, right? We see a property tax increase of $3 because of the Save Our Homes Act, or constitutional amendment or what have you. So I'm just very. I think it is the fiscally conservative thing to do to hold the millage rate where it is, and I want to make sure that message gets sent loud and clear before the September 12th meeting, because I don't want to be at that meeting trying to undo, notionally a decrease in the millage rate.
Any further comments? Well, go ahead.
Vice Mayor, I was hoping to kind of come out of here with some semblance of better, more defined direction on some of these key components. To Commissioner Hardy's point, we did the best we could in listening to what was said at the meetings, and then in our one-on-one discussions to try to divine enough direction to whether to include or not include, or to highlight these items. So it's getting later in the game, and we really need some direction.
Commissioner Amoroso.
City Manager, because you have left these meetings before not having clear direction, whatever direction you need, please ask those questions and poll us. And so staff can get a clear direction on anything that you need that has or has not been discussed tonight. That way you walk away with a clear poll of our direction.
But in the question, my response was, I'm very glad to celebrate the good management that we've had, and wondering what the public relations or marketing effect would be on the reduction. That was my only concern. We still have to pay for what we get, and if we want other things.
I'd like to speak, if I could, please, to the potential reduction of the ad valorem. You know, it's always been my position and desire to create, you know, an economic environment in this city that would encourage investment.
Sure.
And, you know, there's certainly been a lot of obstacles that we've had to deal with, and some of them we continue to deal with as we speak today. I think, though, that as I look at where we are today and where we've been and where we're headed, I see some momentum being built up in terms of creating that economic environment that is attractive, if you will, to folks to come in and buy homes and start businesses and such. And I also believe that at least I made commitments. I think some of us also made these commitments during the discussion of the bond referendum, both the first and second bond referendum. Some of us were using the talking points that are very legitimate, that we felt that by investing in our infrastructure, which obviously needed to be done, that it would enhance our neighborhoods and help accelerate and facilitate even further increases in property value. And that by allowing us to build these roads, allowing the city to take this under our wing, that we should, in theory, as those property values rise, should be able to take a look at the ad valorem side of the equation and start to whittle that back a little bit. So in essence, there may come a time as the property values rise and more people get on and actually forget just the regular existing homes that are paying into, or properties that are paying into ad valorem, but there will be properties that will actually start to pay into ad valorem. And with that, we're going to have, if we're fiscally responsible as your elected officials, and we don't jump at the temptation to go out and spend new money that we have, we should be able to almost, maybe in the future, almost negate, if you will, the debt service associated with the roads over time. Okay, I think that if we don't seriously take a look at reducing the ad valorem rate, which I can't remember the last time we've reduced the ad valorem rate in the city. Okay, and in fact, what we've done, when you mentioned rollback earlier, we've kind of essentially legally, I guess, according to the state of Florida, we've been increasing taxes all these years by not changing the millage rate. It's technically a tax increase. So we have been increasing the taxes on our residents and our business owners every year since I can't remember. Okay, and I think it's time we offer that relief. Now, again, I respect your opinion, Commissioner Hardy, about I'm terrified as well as far as the homestead exemption is concerned. But I've had the opportunity to talk to some folks that are on the Constitutional Review Committee, and I just think that we should just take a wait and see on this homestead exemption. I don't know that this. My original reaction to this was, oh my, the sky is falling. But the more I'm talking to folks and more different organizations and industries that I'm talking to, I think you're going to see widespread opposition in a big way to this. But to your point, if it does come through, yeah, that's something we're going to have to look at. But look at it this way: it's going to be a tax increase. So now we're going to, be back here in 2 or 3 years. We're going to be asking for more money from the taxpayers. So if we can provide a little relief now, continue that momentum of economic, that economic environment, in 2 or 3 years, who knows how much more reinvestment we're going to have in our community in terms of businesses and homes and whatnot. Commissioner Robinson?
I question your phrasing of a tax increase because of the value of properties going up. I mean,
Come on.
City Manager, would you go explain rollback? Or truth and millage?
It technically, as your values grow in the city and you apply the millage rate, the dollar amount that you bring in increases. And per the state's definition, that's an increase. So that's why we have to advertise not only the current millage rate for the budget, but also the rollback rate. And the rollback rate would reduce the millage so that as the value rises, you bring in the same dollar amount. So that's the threshold that the state uses by definition. Does that make sense?
Commissioner Hardy.
Yeah, not that I love bashing our legislators who put together these definitions of things, but that's, if my income increases from one year to the next, the government hasn't increased my taxes. I've just increased my earnings, and I therefore have to pay more. I'm not. Here's what I think. We have property value growth in this city has outpaced that of the county for several years in a row now. And that is despite our 8.99 millage rate, that's MTSU included, right? I always mess up that acronym.
MSTU.
MSTU.
It's the fire rescue.
Right. MSTU included. I don't see it as a significant enough drag on our growth to look at lowering the millage at this time when so much is uncertain about the future of our ability to collect revenue and provide services for people. I would much rather us realize that growth and realize the benefits of the momentum and then turn around after we have been transformed as a city and say, you know what, this is something that we should consider at that time, but not in the midst of our metamorphosis.
If you don't mind, I'd like to speak to that directly.
Sure.
I think you mentioned earlier the as property values appreciate, the most anybody's going to get nailed for is 3% with the Save Your Homes Act. And you're absolutely correct in most cases. Here's the kicker. New folks coming into the city, buying a home, are going to get strapped with the 9 mills of taxation on whatever the value of that property is. So their neighbor may be paying taxes on $100,000, and their house may be worth $500,000, and the guy that moved in next door is in a $500,000 home, and he's going to take it in the nose. He's going to pay full freight. So that is a deterrent, in my mind's eye, in some cases, to investment into the community. So by showing that we are reducing our tax rate, shows the outside world that we are,
That would be the same case in any community.
Sure it is. But my point is, when you're at 9 mills of taxation and you only have a 10 mil cap, okay, at some point you got to start thinking about ratcheting it back a little bit. Commissioner Amoroso?
I agree with Commissioner Hardy 100%. I, see where you're coming from as far as, I just don't know that it's the right time now. I think that's something we can look at next year. And everything that we've been doing for 6 years has brought our property values up. And we've been working on that. And I argue that, that it's not fair for somebody that's been here for 50 years to be paying one tax and somebody that bought here next week is paying more. That's what we've worked for. That's how we've gotten to the budget we have today is building our tax base, and we need to continue to do that. And, like I said last time, I agree with lowering it. I just don't know that with all the uncertainties and, borrowing from fund balance and staff educated me a little bit more on some things with that, but I'm still not comfortable with how the package looks when we have so many other needs right now. I proposed, putting parking structures in downtown, additional parking at the beach because we need it. And, it was pushed to number 3 because we had so many other needs. And, I think the Park of Commerce won out over it, more money in the roads. But if we continue to decrease, and we still haven't even talked about, the pool and the beach and other funding. So, I support it. I just don't know that it's the right time.
Commissioner Hardy?
Could I just add one thing to that? I think it's Here's what I think. I think if we're committed to one day, right, lowering the millage rate, which is something that we'd all love to do one day, what I think we should do is we should set some benchmarks as far as levels of service that the city is providing to the community, right, in the various areas that we provide services, and say that when we are able to reach X, levels of, by however you want to measure it, and that's going to be unique to various departments, that we should then come back and consider formally doing this. And I don't know if that's something that we can do, but I think it's something that we should maybe consider. Just a thought. I think though that we're pretty well polled here as far as the millage rate reduction. It seems to me that myself, Commissioner Amoroso, and Commissioner Robinson, I have to not to use people's names, Commissioner, seem not to favor a reduction in the millage rate at this time, and I think I don't want to belabor this topic.
Commissioner Amoroso.
And just to piggyback on that, just like we did with bringing our utility rates into parity with FP&L, I think we can do the same thing, have staff know that is a direction that we want to look at, what lowering the millage rate, even more than this, what that looks like, maybe in a couple phrases over a couple years, what that looks like, just like we came into parity with you at FP&L, and this year, we hopefully will, beat them out, but, maybe some kind of step program like that.
Commissioner Robinson.
I agree that it's an interesting idea, and I want to celebrate the management and the place we're at now. And if we could take some money out of the budget somewhere and celebrate that through better marketing or public relations or whatever you want to call it. But that's the way I looked at it, as a PR thing for the management, the direction that management is going.
Okay. Any other comments?
So as we stand right now, this is not something, the millage rate reduction is not something we're going to go forward with in the budget. And we can, in our meetings, have discussion about how you want to resolve how that works on the bottom line. Because right now, we're showing almost a $700,000 projected use of fund balance.
That will change.
That will change, or I don't know that there's anything else out there that we've discussed publicly or individually that you would rather see that money go towards. So,
Well,
that's why they call this a workshop.
Commissioner Robinson.
I'll pass.
Well, Commissioner Amoroso.
What else? What other direction does staff need? Do you need from us tonight?
Well, right now,
We're
I
not
think
missing
we've gotten pretty clear direction on that point, and then that the other piece from our standpoint is very clearly these items that we've said that we need to, take to the sales tax issue goes forward with that direction. They're not funded in these numbers.
Yes.
Okay.
And in looking at the budget, there's at least two other expenses in all the departments, and I really didn't get a chance to get answers on all the others' expenses. So if we could ask the department heads to go back and look at those other expenses, or any way where we can minimize the fund balance, the use of the fund balance.
Well,
Just saying,
Vice Mayor,
City Manager.
just tighten up.
and along those items, the overview for the beach fund, and that also includes taking the pier repair and putting it at the sales tax. That's also understood. That's go forward. Okay, good.
Well, Commissioner Hardy.
I just want to say that in the future, the peer repair I understand, but in the future, any other capital expenses related to the beach fund should be a part of a larger discussion about the financial viability of the beach fund on a long-term basis.
it doesn't look good right now.
It certainly does not. I just want to make sure that this is something I saw pretty late as far as peer repair, coming out of here. I get it, but next year I would like not to have conversations like this without having a larger conversation and coming to a resolution. I understand that we've got the RFQ out and all that. So, yeah.
Well, I think this is how I'd like to close the meeting. In light of the fact that the mayor's not here this evening, and she didn't have an opportunity to weigh in on the things we talked about, particularly the ad valorem tax reduction, I think it would be wise that we leave it as is, and everybody think about it, and then when the mayor gets back, if nobody wants, if the mayor doesn't want to do it either, then we vote it down and ask staff to redo it.
You lost me.
I think it depends on your definition of leave it as is.
What I'm saying is leave the budget as it is because she didn't have an opportunity to weigh in on it.
But
Okay, she could have brought more to the conversation that perhaps I did, and she may have given somebody information that I wasn't able to provide. Commissioner Amoroso?
City Manager, what is Robert's rules? If we miss a meeting, I don't know that we get to weigh in afterwards.
Well,
in the past, we didn't get to weigh in. Staff would talk and get an opinion and thought on the process, but
That wasn't what I was suggesting. What I'm saying is, because she's not here, doesn't have the opportunity to weigh in, leave it as is, and we go to the commission meeting and she can comment then and vote.
May I?
Go ahead.
Okay, so here's what I think. I don't mind giving the mayor an opportunity to weigh in. What I believe, though, is that what should be on the budget on September 12th, what should be in that presentation should be the status quo.
the consensus
Right.
that came tonight.
Yes, but that consensus is buttressed by the fact that it is the status quo, right? And that if we want to change something, and as a part of this negotiation, we need to start from the status quo and then move to change as a result of any discussion that we have here, not start with a change and then move back to the status quo. That doesn't seem to be the most logical way to do it to my brain. But you do have a good point. I would like to hear where the mayor is. I just don't think that the starting point of the negotiation that we're having up here should be anything other than the status quo.
Vice Mayor, Commissioners, the millage rate advertised is at the full rate.
Correct, the 5.4945.
Okay.
Which does not have a reduction in it. And we generally are always shoot higher because you can always lower it. So if through the hearing process, say y'all do change your mind in those official hearings, that discussion can take place and you can take an official action. But right now, it's already advertised at the current rate anyway, and that may help you in your considerations.
Commissioner Amoroso.
So this will come back as a line item on our regular agenda for conversation, because that's what I'm hearing from the vice mayor in order to get, and I agree with the mayor should weigh in, but how is that procedure going to look? Because in order for her to weigh in, does it not have to be, or is it just going to be a conversation somewhere on the agenda?
On the next hearing, which would be for the first hearing on the budget, it would be an official discussion before you take action at that point.
Okay.
And y'all will have a discussion. As I understand it, that would be the normal process, unless I'm hearing something uniquely defined. And right now, just to clarify, it's currently at the rate it is now.
Correct. So, is that okay with everybody? Everybody understands we've already advertised at the current rate, and no matter what we do in the next meeting, we're covered. Is that correct?
You can always lower the rate.
Right, but you can't increase it.
You can't increase it.
Right. Okay. Any further comments? Okay, with that, I guess we're adjourned.
Thank you,
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Oh, was there another item?
Was it?
Oh, I beg your pardon, there is another item.
There was another,
An
Oh, the-
update on review of policies and schedules?
Yes, that was just an announcement that on September 19th, we will have the fiscal policies and some other ancillary policies for the commission to review.
Very
And those
well.
are just housekeeping items.
Very well, thank you, Maria.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, staff. Yes, sir?
If we're gonna discuss future schedules, is there some place on the calendar that we could have a retreat or a workshop just to be, to communicate our thoughts on the future of Lake Worth? Some sort of communication. I've really felt that, and I'm guilty of not communicating, and I would like to do more listening, and I have gotten the sense that I'm coming up short.
Okay. To your question, in the past, there have been retreats. There was one about 7 years ago. And
7 years.
7 years ago. And the city brought in a facilitator as an objective third party to facilitate the retreat. So I imagine that if it was the will of the commission, something like that probably could be put together. And to your point, certainly it would be good to have that conversation within the next 3 or 4 months, well before the next budget cycle comes out. So,
And
and I also would add that if we do that, okay, if we have that conversation, we have that exercise, I think that's going to be very helpful for staff, obviously. But I think it'll also be another example of how we keep improving this process as far as our budgeting and our ability to get things done and get 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack, which is typically how we do things around here. But it's getting better every day. Commissioner Hardy?
Myself being new to this, I don't know that you guys are talking about the same thing. I'm wondering what sorts of things would such a retreat entail. It sounds to me that Herman was thinking more of like a joint town hall.
no,
Okay, so what is this retreat business, and how does it go towards our ability to communicate with the residents, or how would itself be an act of communication towards the residents? I'm totally ignorant on this. I
No,
admit.
that's okay. It's like everything else, it's an advertised meeting. Folks are welcome to come, but it is really it's essentially a workshop, a major workshop, usually lasts all day. And generally, there's no input from the public. It's just an opportunity for the 5 to get together and kick around ideas. And Commissioner Amoroso.
And I don't know, I can't speak for Herman, but in the past or in other boards, it's a way for the board to get together and share their visions of what they think, the next steps in Lake Worth, or where they think Lake Worth should be going. And that's kind of, after talking to your residents in your districts, you bring forward where you would like to see the next steps be taken. And that gives staff a little direction on, we've had visioning boards where, you pick 10 topics that have risen to the top, and then you go and you put your stars next to ones, and, the top 5 are your next steps. Granted, things change throughout the year, but, just the next vision where you see, and that kind of gives everybody a thought, because, sometimes we have 5 different views, 5 different districts, and not every district is the same. So, sometimes it tends to, be more of an argument up here because everybody's trying to, fight for something that's best for their district. And it's not always the same in every district.
And I would add to that in my mind's eye, the logical way to roll one of these out is to basically break down each of our departments, beach fund, electric fund, general fund, infrastructure, and get into specific topics like infrastructure or whatever, and say, what do you all think about the electric fund? Is there anything you want to see? What kind of things do you want to see out of electric? What do you want to see out of the beach? What do you want to see out of the golf course? What do you want to see out of what's going on? Does that make sense?
So it's basically a long, informal, future-oriented meeting, workshop. Okay, I would support something like that. That sounds interesting.
And actually, that kind of layers over your CIP program. It helps plan your CIP. going forward.
All right.
Any other comments or questions?
Not from me.
Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned.
All right.